everyone, Ripley with Bob's Watches. I'm here with Justin in the studio for another episode of Watch Talk. We got a special one planned today. We're talking all things James Bond, and we're joined by three special guests. We got Remmert from James Bond Lifestyle, we got Lorenzo from Omega Bond Watches, and of course we've got Mr. Morgan King himself, who is petting a small green monkey and smoking his
resident Bond villain.
Yeah, our resident Bond villain. So we're talking all things James Bond. Bond watches, favorite Bonds, Bond cars, and all the above. But before we get started, a quick wrist check. Justin, what are you wearing today?
Okay, so I'm going with classic Submariner 5513. Bond started out with the Rolex, so I felt it's appropriate to kind of, throw a little nod back. Plus, I love the 5513 anyway, so it's an excuse to get it on my wrist.
And yours doesn't have a circular saw in the bezel today, correct?
This one doesn't. Okay. Because we're just in the studio. Out in the field, I go with the circular saw, but yeah, today. How about you? What do you got?
So I'm wearing the current one, the new Seamaster that will be in No Time to Die. Haven't seen the film yet, but we've seen the watch, and it's great. Yeah, it's a great one.
It is.
How about you guys? Morgan? Are you double wristing? You've got two watches on today?
Well, out of homage, I'm wearing the 6238, of course, with the Bond NATO band. And of course, it wouldn't really be Bond without the 6538.
There you go. The OG Bond.
Yeah, the original. Love
the
it.
OG Bonds.
Yes.
And probably one of the more overlooked Bond watches. Everyone thinks Bond with a sub, and he's got a few different subs. But yeah, there is the pre-Daytona Bond watch as well, and that's kind of one that just almost gets forgotten. Was it on Her Majesty's Secret Service where that one was made an appearance? Yes. You guys would probably know better than me.
Yeah.
1969, George Lazenby.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Great watch.
Lorenzo, what are you got on today?
So today I got on my Seamaster chronograph 321 for one at the end of Spectre.
Nice.
See if I can get it in there real good for you to see it. But a lot of people miss this watch in the movie. It's just a quick flick of the wrist when he turns on the DB5 at the end. And a lot of people don't really know it's in the movie, but it's definitely a sleeper, and I love it.
It's also just a sleeper Omega in general. Everyone talks about 321 Speedies and just the 321, the vintage ones being rare in general, but you can find them in Seamaster chronos like that, and most people, it's not even on their radar, so good looks there.
Yeah.
How about you, Remmert?
I got the Omega Seamaster Quartz, the 2541. Basically the first Omega worn by a Bond, and to me also like one of the nicer looking ones, original Pierce Brosnan GoldenEye Omega. So yeah, I love it. It's easy to wear. It's always on time with the quartz. Easy.
Yeah, it's like the original Omega Bond, which I love. We talk about, the Rolex in the very first one when the movies came out, but, Omega is so synonymous with Bond currently that, it's nice to...
Yeah, and correct me...
the one that started it all.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was the one when they first started the partnership and we're trying to decide what watch is Bond going to wear, what Omega. That was the one that the costume designer had chosen, not just because it was what Omega was trying to push, but it was the model that most lined up with who Bond was as a character, his background, former, a diver, naval commander, all of that. So it made sense, and that was the one chosen. Right? Yeah. And quartz, honestly, realistically, quartz would be the movement chosen for anything, high intensity thing. So very true to form.
Yeah.
I guess, do you guys, favorite Bond in general, favorite Bond actor? Do you guys, do you guys, for me, it'd be Connery, but I'm sure everyone's got their opinions.
Yeah. Connery's like, he's the original, so it's kind of hard to, it's like first is always the best. And I agree. I think Connery's the best. I also really like Brosnan. That was kind of my introduction to Bond as you growing up. I was born in the 80s, and those were the ones when, I kind of really started appreciating like what James Bond was and how cool he was, and, all the gadgets and girls and all that. So Brosnan's got a little place in my heart because he was kind of like the first one that I associate with. And I didn't see the original. Those were like the first ones I saw. So I didn't see the original, the Sean Connery ones until later, which are, fantastic. But yeah, I think, I couldn't just choose one. For me, it's kind of between those two.
Yeah, for me, it's either Connery or Craig. I really like kind of the more serious, stoic role he's taken. What about you guys? Remmert, do you have a favorite Bond actor?
I'm all with Justin here in this case. I think Sean Connery is just hard to beat. And if you look back in the old movies, the coolness that he has is just so hard to beat still. Like, it's amazing how he pulls that off, and just this inborn, smoothness. But I also saw the Pierce Brosnan movies in the cinema. Those were my first cinema movies of Bond. So for me, he's a real good-looking Bond. looks the part in both tuxedo and with a machine gun. So for me, he's probably a good second.
Yeah.
Lorenzo?
So for me, it was Brosnan, but when Daniel came on the scene, he's my favorite Bond. I mean, I got him right behind me here, but I like the seriousness, the grittiness he brought to the character. He does lack a little bit of the lighter side of the character, but I do appreciate the hardness he brings to Bond. And I feel like we need to see Bond more as like a stone cold killer. So for me, he nails that. And then obviously Sean Connery's incredible. So like he's like my 1B, so
Right.
it's hard to pick between the two, but I go Craig first.
I am a clown, so I love Roger Moore. As you know, as I mentioned before, I grew up with Roger Moore in the 70s. So for me, it's always been kind of like a tongue-in-cheek. Obviously he does assassinate people. He needs to take out the bad guys. But when it comes to down, he does know how to have a little fun. And honestly, I really think that with Roger Moore also, he's been in 7 films. So he was a cigar smoker. He was one of the Bonds that demanded fine cigars on set. So that was kind of really, really cool to know as far as I just got to learn more about them. But I think Roger Moore was great. Moonraker was funny. Octopussy was another great one. But as I grew older and I realized, hey, let's be mature about it. Sean Connery's still number one. Dr. No, hands down, the best.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of one of the interesting things about the Bond franchise. It's been around for a really long time, and you've got these really serious movies, like any of the Craig ones, where you're probably not likely to laugh at all during it, and then you have these very kind of fun, lighthearted, campy ones in the earlier years, and then you've got ones that sort of fall everywhere in between.
Kind of
There really sort of is a Bond film for everyone, and it's great talking with other fans because rarely, everyone sort of agrees, yeah, Connery's great, but beyond that, everyone has a very different, preference as far as what their flavor is or, what just resonates with them from their upbringing in their childhood. I guess we should probably get into Bond watches. That's a hard one to pick. I don't know. For me, it's hard. I mean, the 653 is going to always be the first watch to come to mind. But for me, if I'm thinking favorite Bond watches, aesthetically, I'm torn between a vintage Rolex sub like Morgan 6538 or the Spectre limited edition with the 12-hour bezel. I wouldn't want mine to blow up. That seems like a hazard I don't want. And if we're choosing the watch purely on its merits, give me the original Bond Seamaster where it's got like a grappling hook, a laser beam. I can throw the helium escape valve and blow something up. Yeah. That one's got the coolest capabilities. But I think for me, if I had to choose one, it would be the 6538. Just the original, the classic. Just a great looking watch.
It is. I mean, the 6538 is like you said, it's the original. It's the one that started it all. It's even if it's not your favorite, I feel like it's hard to overlook, right? I mean, it's got to be in your top. But for me personally, I like the Seamaster. I think it's like you said with the quartz, it's appropriate, and I love the that was the choice when they went to Omega, and Omega and Bond have such a tight tie that I just think it's super appropriate. And like you said, how they chose it because of his history in the Navy, and it was really well thought out, and it makes sense as a watch for a spy. It's not just like they kind of shoehorned it into this character. Like I could see that working really well if this was a real life situation. Plus it's a great looking watch, and I think
and the luminous pip has a laser beam, so yeah, what more can you ask for?
I mean, we start talking about extras, like that one's hard to beat. But I think if I had to choose one, I mean, it's hard. I'm sure you guys feel the same way. It's hard to choose just one. I mean, I can make a case for just about every single one of these up here. I love that new Aquaterra, that blue. Yeah, let's see, maybe I can bring it in for you guys.
Yeah, and so we might even want to qualify what constitutes a Bond watch. So there are the watches that James Bond has worn on screen, and then there's these other ones that are almost more in the movie memorabilia space, where it never appeared on screen, but it's heavily 007 themed as far as its design elements. And then you have models like the Spectre that I just mentioned, where it is the limited edition, but it was also the screen-worn version as well. But I guess everything's fair game as far as this one, even ones like this.
This is great. And to me, so functionality aside, right? Like it doesn't have the rotating bezel, which I think, it really needs for, a spy who's timing explosions and, all these things. But to me, this one, the styling of this one probably does better than any of the other ones, going from the field to black tie to everywhere. It can dress up, it can dress down, it looks fantastic, all over the place. So, I mean, like I said, there's a case to be made for all of them. Yeah,
there is a case for the Aquaterra as a solid Bond watch. Yeah. Lorenzo, what about you? Favorite Bond watch or watches?
Ripley, I'm going to agree with you. Like for me, it's the Spectre. I'm going to reserve judgment on No Time to Die, seeing as we haven't seen the film yet. So, I mean, again, for me, the connection starts with being on screen and seeing it, and the emotional connection of it, how they relate it to the movie. Another thing I like is, like you guys brought up about the Aquaterra. I think it's a great piece. It can dress up, dress down. The only thing that I struggle with that model is the polished center links. Like it picks up scratches pretty quick, so it's a little tough. That's why people tend to lean towards the Skyfall Aquaterra, because it's all brush bracelet. But yeah, I'd have to say the Spectre 300 would be, if I had to pick one, that's the one I'm going with right now. I reserve judgment till the end of October though. But outside of the Spectre, I would say, you know, I do like the Planet Oceans. Like, I think they wear well. They're tough watches, and I mean, I just like something that's durable. I'm more of like a tool watch kind of guy. Like, I like things that I can actually use and they're going to hold up. So I lean towards those.
Yeah, and there, you guys would probably be able to confirm this, but I remember hearing that for one of the Planet Oceans, Omega had made it in titanium specifically for the movie, for the stunts and the action scenes. The standard model is a steel reference, but they had made this one-of-one titanium piece to be worn. And I think Christie's or someone auctioned it a while ago, but would that be your grail of the various Omega Planet Ocean James Bond watches?
So with the Planet Ocean, I think there was like 3 or 4 made for production. And yes, one was auctioned off at Christie's. And I just don't understand why they just didn't. They have that model in titanium. It came in blue. And, you know, and so to get a screen accurate watch, you know, yeah, it would be a Grail thing. I'd like to see him do like a 10th anniversary watch, maybe for Skyfall next year, and release the original. I think that'd be really cool.
Remmert, what about you? Favorite Bond watch? Is it the one on your wrist or other?
So I'm going to make a case for the digital watches, actually, because I got into watches mostly as a kid, and I had like a whole row of little small digital watches, you know, as a 10-year-old, trying to fix them a little bit, you know, make the sound go to headphones, which actually worked, you know, because they were all really sort of, you know, fun to play around with. So that's also got my interest in Bond and the digital watches, the connection. And so for me, that has a nostalgia feeling. So I have a lot of the Seikos that Roger Moore wears, which I think are also very appropriate in the sense that they have actually, gadgets that maybe not always real, but they are real in a story of like a spy using a really useful watch in the sense that it can actually do something. I got one of the Grail watches, the TV watch, actually, which I think is an amazing watch. I can show it quickly. That's just like, of course, a gadget. I mean, that's a Bond watch just, you know, by itself because of all the stuff.
It's really a Bond watch,
like that can just do so many things. And I got it recently. It's a pretty, you know, stunning piece, I think. Great. So that's cool. Probably one of my favorites for my Grail watches, but I have like also the, you know, Moonraker one. They're all just very functional. Actually going up a lot in value of some of the watches. Like I don't have the horseshoe one, which is really expensive right now. But so yeah, for me, those are probably the ones that I would, you know, go to as my favorite ones. But for the more automatic or the more, you know, luxury watches, my heart goes out to the Omega Seamaster.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we kind of being, you know, in the watch community, and you know, there's this thing where, you know, we love vintage watches and automatic and like the romance of the nostalgia and all that. And I feel like you're right. The digital watches do get overlooked,
but they are most true to.
Exactly.
Yeah, I probably realistically, if Bond today had a watch, it'd probably be an Apple Watch because that can do most of the things that some of these early ones like. I think the digital watches that you bring up is a really interesting point because a lot of those, you know, pre-gadgets of being able to send or receive a message.
Right.
Oh my God, you know, all of that is just natively part of, you know, an Apple Watch. It's also so ubiquitous that you'd never think twice about someone doing something with their watch. And, you know, so that is kind of an interesting point. They're not as glamorous, the older Seikos, but realistically speaking, you know, they were kind of like the
really appropriate.
Yeah, the prototype before the smartwatches.
Like at the time, that was the super technology.
Yeah, well, that was even tech that didn't exist yet. And now even think about, imagine your watch printing out a little, a physical printout. I mean, like, that seems so ludicrous.
Now James Bond can order his PPK via Amazon Prime. It can just show up.
While simultaneously FaceTiming, taking a photo, and getting something from Uber Eats delivered.
Sorry, but one more thing. The most watches you see in other movies, like where people are either in commando or like combat situations, are mostly the Casio G-Shocks or the Sunto
Exactly.
watches, for example, because those are the sort of modern equivalent of actual, they can withstand a lot of impact, or they have a lot of functions, not per se connectivity with the internet, but mostly like as watch functions go, those are the ones that would be probably the ones worn in the field right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, Seiko had a huge run, right? From the late 70s all the way to the 80s, right? From The Spy Who Loved Me, The Spy, like all the Seikos. If I remember watching all, I was like, I need one of those.
Didn't he have like a tuna on in one of them as well? Like he had a lot, he had a lot of different Seikos. Yeah, there's a lot of different Seikos there.
Mm-hmm.
Roger Moore must have had a deal with Seiko because he was just wearing every single one from the late 70s all the way to like 1985. I think all the way to like A View to a Kill, he had like a Seiko H558. 90310, 6636, those Seiko serials. Crazy.
Yeah. But it started off with this one, of course.
There you go.
It's hard to see, but it's this is the remake, of course, the Hamilton, but it's similar to the Pulsar one that he wore, which is at that time also very advanced. So that's also kind of cool that he wore something that advanced in in the Live and Let Die movie, basically.
So Morgan, is favorite watches then? Would it be a Seiko, or were we in the Rolex family?
Well, you want to be true to Seiko because James Bond is immortal, right? He's kind of like Batman. He can do anything with a paperclip, if you will. So in essence, with the Seiko, it's almost ideal because you expect James Bond, right? Because James Bond in Fleming's, he had an Explorer 1016. That was the original Rolex that James Bond was supposed to wear. But as you get older and you realize he can do anything with the Seiko, it's like, back then, the Seikos were like, well, this technology advanced, but it's not as cool as a Rolex or even the Gruen that he used back in Dr. No. But the fact that he can do anything with it, he could have probably killed you with the Seiko too. It wouldn't have made a difference at all.
Well, yeah, in one of the books, doesn't he club someone with his watch? Like he uses it like a knuckle duster or something? It wasn't in the movie. It was in one of the books where he like wraps around his hand and like he knocks someone in the head with it. So I guess it doesn't need to be a gadget, doesn't need to shoot a laser beam or a grappling hook. Yeah. It can just be a heavy piece of metal.
I was going to actually comment on what you said about the knuckle duster. There's actually a scene in Casino Royale where Daniel Craig actually does use his Omega as a knuckle duster, but they actually edited it out. But you can still see like little scenes where he actually, still has it on his hand. That's why like towards the end, you don't see him wearing the watch. So just a little fun tidbit.
Yeah, that's cool.
You can imagine Omega didn't need people trying that out and wondering why their watch needs service.
Why do you have an Omega insignia on your head? Why like a bezel?
Is that a Seamaster bracelet? Yeah, that sounds, and I mean, the fact that there is a rubber stunt watch lets you know that, that was definitely originally part of it.
Like the Daniel Craig movies actually started off with the watches without too many gadget functions at all. Like it's actually kind of a slow start for him for the watches to actually do something. So I'm looking forward to the No Time to Die when the movie is actually, apparently we saw some clips from Omega, right, with the watch. You probably saw it, where we see that the watch really is going to have some Q specifications. But the first movies actually didn't have anything. So
I noticed that too.
Got up to speed.
Yeah, that I think is a pretty good point. Sean Connery's watch didn't have any, crazy stuff going on in it really. And then we get to Craig, and he's just wearing basically standard production Omegas all the way up until Spectre, where I think that was the first time where one of the, the screen worn watch was something different than just what you could get out of the catalog. And I think that's a really good point, how Bond's watch can be this crazy thing from the Brosnan era that has a grappling hook, a laser beam, and a detonator, or it can literally just be a watch, and apparently you can knock someone in the head with it too, but just a watch, and there's nothing else bestowed upon it. And then you start to see it pop up more with the explosive detonator inspector. And given how much attention the No Time to Die watch has been getting, and how they involved Daniel Craig in the design of it and all that, I wouldn't be surprised if there was something, it had a significant part in the story, but obviously,
there's two schools of thought, right? Like you said, you could have just the classic watch, and it's just an appropriate watch, and it's a great choice, but there's nothing special or extraordinary about it. Or there's the other side where it's extremely extraordinary, and like you said, there's a chainsaw on it and a detonator. Personally, I kind of missed that out of the Daniel Craig, the early ones, where it's just a watch, and it's a nice watch, but to me, especially being James Bond, and we love the cars with all the cool gadgets, and that's a huge part of James Bond to me. That stuff is so cool. I remember being a kid and like, you know, wanting to make my bike do all the cool stuff that the cars did, and the watch is the perfect opportunity to kind of showcase some of that creativity of like the cool spy gadgets that no one really has or knows about. So I love that. I mean, I like that, you know, there's the laser cutter in the one and all that, the grappling hook.
It detracts
really
from
far-fetched, but to me, that's just that extra cool spy touch, and the watch is a perfect vehicle for it.
There's a scene in one of the Bond films where they give him an Omega 300M, and he's like, "What's the feature of this watch?" He says, "It just tells time because you're always late, James."
Yeah. He's like, "What does it do?" And he's like, "It tells time." I remember that, and you know, I like that. I hope to see more of that. I don't know how you guys feel. You know, I'm sure different people. Some people probably really just like the watch because it's the watch, and you know, it's a great choice for the character. But for me, I like all the cool, like extraordinary details and you know, functions that they've put on it. What do you guys think?
I think for me personally, like I really appreciate GoldenEye because towards the end you see, you know, Alec Trevelyan take Bond's watch and put it up next to his. And to me, that's just like such a cool moment. But then with the new film, for the first time since GoldenEye, we're going to see another 00 agent wearing the same watch as Bond. So I think that's going to be absolutely cool to see that and kind of see if there's any kind of connection there or not.
Yep, very cool.
Well, there actually aren't there supposed to be, like, originally, according to the book, there's supposed to be only 3 00 agents, and there were like 9 in one of the scenes in the 60s where there were 9, they all sat together, and James Bond shows up last, right? So there's 001 all the way to 009, but 007 is the seat is empty and all waiting for him, and then he walks in saying, "Sorry, gentlemen," and he sits down, and so that's when like I realized, oh, there's more than 1 00, and so it's not like one dies and then he replaced them; they're all around. But I guess this one showcases 07. And of course, 06 with Sean Bean, the character.
Sure.
Yeah, I think having the watches have gadgets does kind of detract from the realism of it, which is probably why they more or less steered clear in the Craig years. But I mean, I love watches and I love gadgets. So like, you tell me the Seamaster, which is already a cracking watch, can have a grappling hook or a laser beam. Oh, I'm in. Yeah, I do appreciate that. But at the same time, you know, you see a laser beam shoot out of a luminous pearl, and you know that's you know, it does kind of bring you out of the realism of it. But I mean, that to a certain degree, that's sort of the charm of Bond. It isn't hyper realistic in many cases. It's this sort of fantasy of the, you know, the spy world, and I think it plays perfectly into it, and also is mirrored in the cars. Like, not all Bond cars are crazy and have crazy features, and the same thing with the watches. Some are just kind of regular cars, others are insane, like the
invisibility.
Oh, there you go. So I guess Bond cars, do you guys have a favorite? I guess it's more like the watches, apples and oranges across the board, but I'm curious. Morgan, is that your number one right there, the classic DB5?
Yes, the DB5, Aston Martin, Goldfinger. When of course he's taken over, he's in Asia somewhere, and there's a guy in the car seat. He just odd jobs just takes out his girlfriend, right? And this henchman is in the passenger seat with the gun holding it to James Bond. Of course, James Bond pushes the button and boom, the ejection seat. Look at the little image. The little guy is flying out. It's awesome. And that's, ever since I saw that, I'm like, do all the Aston Martins have this feature? I gotta get it. I have to get it. My dad's like, no, they don't.
Cool. Yeah. That's iconic. It's an iconic scene. It's a cool, back to like the cool gadget things. Like you said, there's like, I need an Austin. If this is what they do, I could think of a million times I need to use this.
And the car, the DB5s showed up in a number of films, old and new, correct? Like it's kind of the one that's continuously sort of reappeared. What about you guys, Lorenzo? Favorite Bond car?
For me, I lean towards the DB10 for a few reasons. It was made specifically for Spectre. I love the fact that they created a car around the character. It's just, to me, it's just the modern Bond car. And I love the DB5, but to me, I love just the sleekness of that DB10 and the fact that it's a concept car and what it took to get it on screen. So I'm in that camp for sure.
That's cool. Yeah, it's kind of like the old versus new. It's similar with the watches, right? We have the, very nostalgic, like the ones that kind of started it all, and then there's the progression over, like 26 movies now, that the it's like a new iteration of that, which I think is fantastic. It's like, if this was the first Bond movie today, that's what they would be. It would be something like the DB10 with today's technology and, the guys in the lab kind of working on what they could do with, what's at their disposal now. That's a perfect example. It's a great one.
Remmert, how about you? Favorite Bond car?
Yeah, it must be the DB5 probably. It's just not only because of it's just an iconic car with all the gadgets, but also in real life, it's just a real stunning car. Like I was in Switzerland a few times for some Bond events where somebody had one of those cars driving around. Every time you see it, it's just like such an amazing, beautifully designed car. Like it's on pictures, it's almost getting we get so overloaded with it, and it's getting so much use now in all the films. It's almost too much, but it is just a classic beauty, So for that reason, it must be the classic one. But I also like the Lotus. I think the Lotus is a very unique car, a great design car.
That's my favorite.
And of course, with the gadget functions of the submarine, it's actually just as classic in a way. But those are definitely the classic ones. I mean, I think it's hard to beat the DB5 really. But
the other power that the DB5 has is it attracts a lot of beautiful women. I don't know what happens every time you drive the DB5. Women just show up. It must be like a trademark. All the Bond girls are like, oh, there's our car. There's James. Let's go see him.
It's true.
Tremendous.
In the Casino Royale, doesn't he steals the guy or wins the guy's car at poker and then picks up the guy's own girlfriend or wife or whatever in that same car. Yeah. So maybe there is something. Maybe it's a Q gadget in there. I like the Lotus S1 that turns into a sub. For me, the DB5 is like the quintessential Bond car, and the new Aston Martins are so on brand for what you could actually see him driving, this kind of a supercar with a bit more believable sort of features, but. Well, with the exception of the one that turns invisible, and that's probably the craziest Bond car. But I mean, next to that is the Lotus that just turns into a submarine, complete with like sea-to-air missiles and everything else. Yeah. I just remember seeing that when I was a kid and going, "Well, that's awesome,"
Yeah.
I thought the flying DeLorean in Back to the Future was cool. This completely one-upped it. It's a underwater Lotus, so I'm right there.
I like the fact that they bring some of the cars back, like the original. They've brought back, and up until like pretty much modern day. I think it's a great touch because it's such a classic car. It holds a place in a lot of people's hearts. And like you said, aside from all that, it's just a gorgeous car, right? Like it's just. Without any of the gadgets or out any of the nostalgia, like at the time, it's just a gorgeous machine. It makes me kind of think why I don't see that with watches, and I would like to see it a little more personally, right? Like we see, like the original, like the Dr. No, and some of the Rolexes that happened, and I guess there's a thing with branding and licensing now that's a little different about going back and kind of showing some of the original watches. But I would like to see Vintage Omega make an appearance in one of the newer movies, and even if it's not like his go-to watch or his number one, I'd like to see it for a scene at maybe a black tie dinner or something like that, where they kind of show a little nod, and because vintage cars, vintage watches are kind of similar. A lot of people have a lot of sentiment in those things, and I don't really see too many vintage in the newer stuff, which kind of disappoints me a little personally. I don't know about how everyone else feels, but I'd like to see it.
Then you have Q's wall, just like the 2915, the 2998, the 1215. Like these are all the past 00s that had theirs, and they returned it back, James. So please return it over.
That would be cool. Like a wall with old watches from all the return watches. Yeah, they did return it. Thank you.
Yeah.
For me, I think it would be cool if they did that from a nostalgia standpoint, but from a collector standpoint, I'm like, please don't. It's just it took 5 years to track down this vintage. I don't want to go through that again.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but it would be nice to see that one more, like the one you have. Like it would have been nice to see it more up close, or like in an appropriate scene, I guess. Because it's so brief. Like it's really
so
also
short.
Thanks to the call sheet that we even know.
Yeah, such a good piece. Yeah,
and I think there could be a possibility. Omega has a deep involvement in the Bond franchise. It's not like they just send over a couple watches. They're making watches specifically for the films and all of that. I think it'd be a great way to add in a little bit of an Easter egg where you've got like the original Quartz Bond Seamaster amid a bunch of just stuff in Q's office or something, and it's like, oh yeah, that was the old one. We were looking at refining the design. But I mean, if you look at it, like the first Omega Seamaster that James Bond wore alongside the current one, you know, what you get, the DNA is right there. I mean, like, it's immediately identifiable, but just dropping that little Easter egg, don't have to say anything about it. You could just see it on the desk as the shot pans across it. Would be such a great Easter egg for watch lovers, where it's like, that was the first Omega that Bond ever wore, and they're just kind of looping it in. And it would be easy for Omega to do because, you know, just as you saw with like First Man and the other movies, if you're able to tap their archives, you know, it's an open book. They're going to make it as historically correct as possible and really just help you out. But yeah, personally, I'd love to see that, although I feel you on the prices of vintage references. You see Bond rocking a great sleeper. That's not going to be a sleeper.
Also in the movie Skyfall, right, when there was a scene with the criminals walking through the subway, right, through the tube, they had Omega advertisements in the back.
Yeah,
I don't know if you noticed that, but that was an Easter egg. I was like, did they just do that? Yes, they did. You
there's
on there. Just
I think
that
wasn't an accident.
That must have cost $1 billion to do Omega. That must have cost $1 billion.
But I think it was really cool what they did in Casino Royale, which is pretty bold in a way for a company that sponsors the movie so strongly, is that they you know, Vesper Lind in the train asked Bond, you know, what are you wearing? Are you instead of you know, a Rolex and like Omega, you know? I mean, there they actually mention the brand.
Beautiful.
While it's heavily sponsored. You know? So I mean, it is. That's pretty good, you know, Easter egg, or like it's pretty obvious, but it's like a real reference in a way to the old movies, which is pretty full on and not, you know, it's you can't escape it. And I think that was a pretty bold move to do that.
Yeah.
And I think it also just kind of very much drew a line in the sand of like, this is a new Bond, we're taking this in a different direction. And if anyone had any question about it, he's going to correct her on the type of watch that he's wearing. It's not a Rolex, it's an Omega. Sorry, Omega.
Omega, beautiful. And Eva Green has to say it, otherwise it just doesn't work.
Another interesting thing I'd like to get your guys' opinion on is, so we got this, I love this watch, by the way. I think it's just designed so well. I like the colors. I like the titanium. It's a little bit different, a little bit vintage, but not too different and not too vintage. And this is one that Daniel Craig actually had some input on the design. And that's something that is pretty recent, right? Like through the entire history of Bond, they really haven't gone with the actors' input and let them collaborate kind of on what the watch should be or should look like, or these features. And now they haven't. And personally, I think they've done a great job on this one. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that it's kind of cool that they, you know, tie some of the input in from the actor and, you know, to kind of round it out? Or do you think that that's not really a thing?
Well, the rumor has that the Ministry of Defense really was a Daniel Craig fan. So when Daniel Craig wanted the Broad Arrow insignia on it, as you know, the Broad Arrow is a British intelligence, you know, military. They only put it on officially authorized British gear. And the fact that they're like, you're doing it for the James Bond edition and it's Daniel Craig, okay, we'll do it. But only this once, we'll do it.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's great. It's great because, you know, because if you notice, all the Broad Arrows, as you know, are like in Rolex and Mil Subs. But this one, because it's for commercial use, technically is not a, you know, you're not using it for British purposes. So the fact that they have it, I think, is great. It's lovely. I'm still waiting for mine, Omega Boutique, please. Just call me for that. I'm still waiting forever. Oh, so impossible.
So for me, when I saw the spy shots of the watch early on in production, I don't like to make judgment until I get the official stuff or see it in my hands. And when I saw that it was brown, I was kind of like, I don't know. But I knew I was going to get it anyway because I collect all the Bond watches on screen. But once I saw it in person, it was a completely different experience. So anyone that has like kind of like not sure, or they're on the fence right now, if you haven't seen it in person, I highly recommend like just reserving judgment until you do that, because it's such a completely different watch in person. It just shows so differently than it does in images.
I felt the same way.
Yeah.
And then the weight of it, the grade 2 titanium. Technically it's a bracelet, you know, it's on a bracelet, and it weighs less than the Spectre does with a NATO strap. So that's kind of like, you know, to me, you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting, you know, the lightweight feel on your wrist, but you're getting the durability of a bracelet, and it's still lighter than a NATO strap. So it's just kind of like, there's a lot of great things about this watch. And then the fully aluminum bezel was awesome. And I think the anodized oscillic aluminum bezel was a great choice by Omega because of the coloring. I think
Yeah,
if they were to go
definitely.
ceramic, it would change the complete look of this model. So
Mhm.
I do agree with that choice that they made.
Yeah, it's
No,
good.
I think.
Like you, I was kind of on the fence
Mhm.
about it a little bit, but after seeing it in person, there's so many things I love. Like the bezel is number one. I love the color. I mean, that bracelet, I was very unsure about it. I kind of didn't like it when I first saw it, and then until I felt it and actually put it on, I was, this is fantastic. It feels amazing. It's comfortable. It's just, really, really well done. Bravo. So yeah, I agree 100%.
You can get NATOs too. They have the NATO version as well. So
Yes.
Yeah, right here. If you wanted
there you go, gentlemen. Now
yeah.
you're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Remmert, what do you think of the upcoming No Time to Die watch?
Yeah, there's. I had the same reservations. I also saw it in real life and liked it. Although I don't love it, I must say I like it, but I'm not sure if it's going to be my all-time favorite. I think the band is still not my favorite. It is comfortable, but the look of it, I'm not sure if it's going to age well. I'm mostly surprised also by the pricing and impressed by the pricing by Omega, like how high they can go and make the watch still popular. Like it's really incredible compared to like a few years ago, like how we've seen the prices go up of like Bond's standard watch. It's getting really out of reach for a lot of people, but the popularity doesn't seem to diminish for it, which is I think an incredible marketing feat, and also of course also a tribute to the design, and it's a watch that people want.
Yeah.
So they definitely got something going on, and of course the whole gadget function will probably add even more to it. So I do applaud the watch. It's not my personal favorite, but I think it's definitely unique, and I like it more than some of the other watches in the Daniel Craig area. So yeah, I think it's definitely a great job by Omega, I must say.
For me, I'm kind of torn from a aesthetic standpoint, and as a watch, I love it. I think it's great. Love the weight, love the look. I love how the dial and even the bezel are gonna kind of age a bit. They've like Omega literally designed it that way to not just look brand spanking new like ceramic. But as a Bond watch, something to be worn on screen, again, I'm going to reserve judgment for till I actually see the movie. But the fact that it's vintage leaning, it's got the colored lume, that seems to be a very modern like trend in watchmaking right now. Where if this is supposed to be something that's been, MI6 issued or modified or created, I don't know if it would be that or if it would just be strictly function forward rather than having that nostalgic heritage element to it. And also Bond is clandestine operations, he's undercover and all of that, telegraphing to everyone on your wrist with the broad arrow that you work for the Ministry of Defense might not be the most sleeper worthy thing where it's like, hey, how'd you get that watch? Unless he was at a vintage watch meetup and there's a bunch of guys with mill subs and that was it fits right in. So I think it's a really hot watch and it's a great watch, and it's hitting on a lot of trends that are popular right now: titanium, kind of patina, a vintage aesthetic overall. But I'll have to see how it looks in the movie, but I mean, would I want it on my wrist? Absolutely. That's an easy question. Absolutely. It's a great watch. It's probably time to round out with the favorite Bond movie of all time, or I guess we can allow a few choices, because it really is apples and oranges when you're comparing some of the ultra campy fun stuff to some of the really grittier Craig movies. But who wants to kick it off?
I'll go first. So for me, it has to be Casino Royale. And the reason being, it's the first Bond story. Like, it's him becoming a 00, and it's like you get to see Bond before he truly becomes Bond, and he becomes this womanizing secret agent that kills in cold blood. Like there's a softness to him still. Like, yeah, he's doing a job, but you see Daniel Craig kind of portray that whole attitude of, yeah, I'm falling in love with this woman, but then she betrays him. So it's just like, to me, it's like this tragic story, but it's the birth of who James Bond, essentially who he becomes. So I love that.
I agree. I think it's a Casino Royale for me too. It can't really exist without the other movies somehow, because of course there's a lot of references to movies that are supposed to take place later in time, but of course are the older movies. So it can't be without the other ones. But like, for example, like a Goldfinger and From Russia with Love are really like, they didn't base it on it. They were just originals in a way almost. So that's why they are so good. But Casino Royale, I think as a movie is just amazing, and I credit it to the director Martin Campbell. I think to how well the pacing of the movie goes from like really tense to really fast paced to really emotional. I mean, it's just a great ride, and it's just so well done. I think it's also Daniel Craig's best movie for sure. And yeah, I think I love probably everything about that movie.
If anyone knows me, they know that I'm a huge collector, right? So collecting wise, I was hugely inspired by Goldfinger. Goldfinger, as you know, was in the 1960s. So they had, Dunhill was also one of the sponsors. So they had like Dunhill Vintage, you know, the Sabre jets, the matching lighters, you know, you name it. I collect all different types, mostly in like silver. But the key thing that my recent find, which I love, is Skyfall. And if you guys know, in the scene at the end when he's in that cabin, he's wearing a Barber Beacon Tokiko vintage Commander B jacket. And of course, as a collector, you got to get this one. This one originally had the hood to it, but as you know, the set designers took it out because it didn't match the way that he was wearing it. So, of course, being a Bond fan also, you got to get the one with the hood. Then, of course, you got to get a bigger size in case you want to layer, right? And then, of course, you got to get the other version, right? The one that everyone wants without the hood. You got to get that. Of course, you also have to get the one in a different color because we're olive green. So there's so many different versions that Bond goes. So whatever he wears, I gotta get it. These jackets are $2,000 because of me, because I keep buying them. Like I want it. Sorry, my fault.
Yeah, you have enough to deck out the every single one of us here.
Yeah.
Well, people always say I don't get dressed up, I costume. So I always try to dress for the occasion. So today, thank you for allowing me to pet my green monkey while I smoke my cigar. My monkey's also smoking a cigar because, you know, we're very connected that way.
Of course, yeah. In terms of movies, I think like out of Craig's movies, Casino Royale, like you guys said, it's just I think far and away my favorite there. But I also got a place for Goldfinger. Right, like that's you know, to me it's almost like I'm judging two different sets of movies. There's almost like the original classics, and then there's like the more moderns. You could probably even make a case for some of those in the middle and break it up. But you know, I'll limit it to two. But yeah, to me, Goldfinger is just so James Bond, right? It's just that perfect balance of like, you know, tense coolness with like a tiny bit of campiness and fun, and you know, the girls and the gadgets, and that was just, it was really good for me. I love that one.
Great villain, great villain as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think Goldfinger, it's kind of a nice balance where there are these kind of like light-hearted little quips, but it's not full campy. It's a great balance. And it's not overtly, you know, so gadget laden that you kind of lose the reality of it. But you know, like you guys have said, Casino Royale was such a good film, and I think it was such a stark contrast to the Brosnan era. Like you know, Lorenzo, you were talking about how he, you know, that's James Bond becoming James Bond. Isn't the opening scene like he gets his kill or his second kill or whatever that gets him his 00 status? And that's a really brutal scene where he's putting that guy down in the bathroom, and it's just so not what you'd see in some of the previous films that I think it's between those two as far as my all-time favorite. But I also have a soft spot for some of like the really, really crazy Brosnan era stuff, like Die Another Day, where we've got like the invisible Aston Martin and the guy with the diamonds like stuck, like what even is that? Like the guy with the diamonds, he's got like an iced out face from the explosion. Like that's just so ridiculous. And then, you know, the invisible car driving around through the snow palace thing, like, yeah, I remember watching that when I was a kid and being like, this is ludicrous, but it's also so much fun, but also kind of in a modern way where it's, you know, not incredibly campy. It's just as campy, but they're trying to be a bit more believable with it. Diamond face adornment notwithstanding.
It's fun.
It's funny because like I do love Goldfinger. To me, is the best Connery film, and for me it's because you have every single piece of the equation in there for its first time. The white tuxedo dinner jacket, the Aston Martin, you know, like you got the Rolex sub in there, you know, just like all these little things we look at Bond and we come to know with him, they're in that movie for me for the first time altogether. And to me it's just like the original formula, so that's why I tend to lean towards Goldfinger as my favorite Connery film.
Yeah, and the watch spotting. I mean, I like that in the older ones too. you see some good watches, and they show them. It's not this little quick blurry thing that you see in a lot of movies today when you think you spot something and you got to check it out. It's like I really got to hand it to the franchises. They do a good job of showing off the watches and working them in appropriately, giving them enough screen time in the appropriate eras where they find a reason to kind of zoom in on it while he's setting the time for a bomb or something, where you can really see the watch and appreciate it and know what it is.
Especially the Roger Moore movies have a lot of that, of course, with all their digital, because they actually show stuff that's happening on the screen. So you have to be able to read it, the digital text that flashes by, or like the timer or the video, or there's just so much to show. So they get some crazy close-ups, like the G 575. 757. That's like that gets like so many mega close-ups. Like it's incredible. Like you don't see that often anymore because there's just they're showing like real tiny details of that digital screen.
Everything's so fast now, whatever. So I appreciate that. I really like that out of the old ones, and for like watch guys, I mean it's kind of extra special, right?
Yeah, Christopher Lee's Man with the Golden Gun. He's got a Cellini Gold Midas. He's wearing that when he's got his golden.
That's nice.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I was like, what is that one? And I had to I think this was before YouTube, so I was like looking, but I finally found out. I was like, wow, Christopher Lee, that's legit. He was
that's a choice right there, right? Yeah.
So hopefully in the new movie we'll see more of the watch in action. I'm pretty sure that they're gonna do some good action shots of this watch as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm expecting it. I really am. So
we joke that the only reason the Seamaster Pro still has a helium escape valve is because they want to use it for some Bond stuff. So hopefully we'll see it. Hopefully we'll see it make an appearance in a glorious way again. You guys, thank you so much for joining us. This was a ton of fun. We might have to do one post release of the film to actually kind of do a recap, see what because because of COVID and everything, this film didn't come out at any time. I mean, I feel like we've been being teased it for like 2+ years. We've had the watch out. We've seen a bunch of trailers. We've had things redacted from what would have come out from Omega, but they're assuming the movie was already out. So it's been a really interesting release, and I don't know if there's been more kind of latent anticipation going into one.
Hopefully we don't have to wait 6 years to find out what the next Bond's going to
be. Yeah, if we get a new Bond watch before we see No Time to Die, I'm going to be a little bit frustrated.
That's my limit.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any more watches. I mean, someone made a comment to me on my page. They said, is there going to be like a Daniel Craig, homage piece for, him ending his filming? I was like, I have no idea. I mean, if they did it like that, to me, that would be better than doing some of the, the like wild, like 007 branded watches that they've done. Like, I think that would be kind of
quiet because they have been bringing out so many watches like in the last few years with Honor Majesty's Secret Service anniversary and
that was a weird one. They weren't even featured in that. We have it right here. The 50th anniversary of Honor Majesty's Secret Service, and that was a confusing release for me because I had to go back and confirm that there wasn't some Omega in the movie where was celebrating this Omega's debut appearance. No, he's wearing Rolex NA. So it's an interesting one where this isn't you're never going to see it on screen. This is almost more movie memorabilia than an actual like James Bond watch. But they're incredibly popular. You know what I mean? Like these are one of those things that I think watch people like them and the movie memorabilia types like them. And given the sheer number that Omega's made, I'm just surprised that they continuously sell out of them and they continuously trade hands on the open market for more than their owners paid for them. So I think that's just kind of proof of the enduring just Bond appreciation in general.
Yeah, so that's the one that's limited edition to 7 million.
Well, thank you guys so much, and thank you for watching. Again, big thanks to our guests, Remmert, Lorenzo, and Mr. Morgan King. As always, tune in next time for another episode of Watch Talk, and if there's anything that you want to let us know, be sure to drop it in the comments below.